Welcome in, Draft Nicks. It's another edition of Draft Nation. This time, I'm joined by our friend from Draft 412 and Draft Nation, JT Toth. JT going to help us talk to our guy, Jim Wexell of Steel City Insider in just a moment. But don't forget, if you haven't yet, draftnation.com is the place to go. Speaking of JT, he's got a ton of player profiles up based on what's happening in college football right now. Starting to look ahead to the draft. You know, the Dion Shador industrial complex as it is may dictate how things look at the top there. I'll also have a midweek mock coming out as well. Cole Musio. We're already ramping up. It's week 12, which means the playoffs are on the way, but it also means that the offseason is on the way for a lot of teams. You're seeing GMs get fired. You're seeing coaching changes in the offing, quarterback changes. So plenty to talk about, and it all affects how things will shake out for your favorite teams. Go to draftnation.com to stay up to date on all of it. But speaking of our guy, Jim Wexell, there he is joining us here on draftnation.com. And before we get started, I like to remind folks, this is the perfect time of year for checking out not just Jim's current content, but the historical stuff that he's worked on as well. Books are out, new one included. There it is, the coffee table edition. For those of you watching on the YouTube video, you can see it. A Pittsburgh Steelers coffee table book. Look at the photos. Plenty of
looking up old history. Bludgeoning the Brownies, 1979.
Bludgeoning the Brownies. I like it. So don't forget, you can get all that by going to Jim's website, jimwexell.com, right, Jim?
Yeah, and you can get it at Amazon if you want to leave me with $1.50 to gain out of this.
Or give Jim the money. Bezos doesn't need any more. Give Jim the money.
Barnes and Noble's cool too. I mean, you like good old-fashioned bookstores too, so help them out.
Absolutely. So this time of year when you're looking for a present for that Steelers fan in your life, jimwexell.com. The place to go. Cleveland, usually the place to go for Steelers teams looking for late season wins, Jim. Before we get into that, or maybe what's happened to them the last couple trips up to the mistake by the lake, let's start with looking at what the Ravens did or did not do at Heinz Field this past Sunday afternoon. They never really got in a groove on the ground. It started with a Derrick Henry fumble early, and the Steelers defense had that sort of, it reminded me in a lot of ways of some of their classic defenses with that swarming mentality, going after the football, and it caused a lot of trouble for the Ravens offense that, like I said, never really seemed to get the ground game going the way I feared they would with Derrick Henry.
You know, it was one of those games where you sit there in the press box and you say, man, the Ravens are trying to give it to them, but they're not putting them away. You know this is going to come back to haunt the Steelers, and it didn't. I was a little surprised that, I thought the Ravens were going to grab that at the end because they tried to give it away for 3.5 quarters. And then Steelers held. Mike DeFabo, I was talking to him, and he gave me a great point. He said, the great, Cam Hayward he was playing some volleyball at the line of scrimmage there, and he had a great game. But it wasn't the great players that were doing it defensively. It was new guys, and it's new guys all the time. And that's what's turning this in from a good defense to a great defense. It's, Nick Herbig, Joey Porter Jr., Deshaun Elliott's had his moments. Peyton Wilson had his big moment. So anyway, I ran that by Bob Labriola, and he said, do a feature on that. So Mike DeFabo gave it to me, and I'm going to turn that into a feature, but it's really turning into a great defense because everybody's playing together.
Hey, Jim, great to hear from you, see you. One of the things that I noticed during the game, this is one of the things that I hope the Steelers would start doing, was they had a little bit of a slight package for Justin Fields. He came in, ran the ball one time. What I was wondering, do you think that they will advance this and be a package that they'll use where, he'll come in, maybe teams will think he's going to run and maybe he'll step back and throw a ball? You think they're going to set this up for down the road a little bit?
What's weird, the week before we talked about Mike Williams' small package. Now we're talking about expanding Justin Fields' package. I was a little surprised in the locker room it became such a story, but yeah, put the quarterback in, run around a little bit. Okay. Expand on it? Yeah, sure. But I hate to see Russ get out of rhythm. And you talk about putting that package in at the in the red zone. That's where Russ. I know Russ has struggled a little bit, but still, that's where he reads the defenses. That's where he doesn't get picked up. He doesn't get picked off.
Not usually, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not gonna look at these past red zone mistakes and say, let's put in a new package. I like Russ reading the defenses and making decisions at the line. I hate to take him in and out like that.
So what's interesting is it being a short week, a Thursday night game, granted against the division opponent, a team that you know fairly well, and they know you pretty well. I imagine, to your point there, Jim, we may not see a lot of new stuff thrown at the wall. It's stuff that they've already worked on a lot this year that they feel comfortable with. Mike Tomlin mentioned it during his press conference earlier this week. You'd like to stick with stuff that you're comfortable with, but you've got to take some of those mitigated risks on things that you haven't worked on throughout the week. What is the fix to the red zone issues then? Because there were a few weeks, first 3 weeks of Russ coming in at quarterback, they were handling things pretty well. They were putting points on the board. Certainly, you're happy you have a guy like Chris Boswell who can kick 6 field goals at a place like Heinz Field, and you can escape with a victory because of your defense. But what is the concern, especially when they run up against teams? The Bengals may not have a great defense, but their offense can score points. They're going to play the Eagles later. They're going to play the Chiefs later. And certainly if they're in the playoffs, which barring a massive collapse is going to happen, they're going to have to score points and convert some more of those red zone trips into touchdowns.
I would like to see, except for this game Thursday night, I want to see Najee Harris carry 30 times and hammer a team that's coming off 3 days rest and that's beat up more than the Steelers are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see that. I would like to see more Najee, but otherwise, the over-reliance on Najee Harris in the red zone, he's just not that good. He's a big hammer, yes, but he's not Derrick Henry, and he doesn't see holes, and he's not that good. You're going to get stuffed on first down with him when it's a smaller area. Just how I feel. It's how I've always felt about Najee. So I know, put it in your comments that I hate Najee, whatever you want to do. I do want to see him hammer the Browns. I want to see there's something about him. He has armor. He does not get hurt. He does not fumble. That's priceless assets. So let's put that to use on a Thursday night game. Otherwise, I want to see less reliance on him in the red zone. I want to see Russell Wilson hitting Pat Freiermuth. I want to see him hitting Darnell Washington. I want to see him hit Mike Williams. I mean, give Mike Williams another play. Is Aaron Rodgers' criticism that Mike had a hard time picking things up, is that valid? I mean, I see Mike out there, and there's somebody always whispering to him about what to do. I assume it's what to do on this play.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if his lack of use is because of that. But, man, I want to see more of him and less of Van Jefferson and Ben Skoranek. That's my red zone. Those are my red zone things. But anyway, as far as back to Justin Fields, sure, I looked up the old the horrible game. They're 0-3 at Cleveland on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
The first one was phase 2 of Unleash Hell. They unleashed hell in December, and they lost to the Raiders, and they come back 3 days later and lose to the Browns. And I saw Josh Cribbs was a leading rusher for the Browns, 8 for 80-some yards, and it was as a Wildcat. So, turn the tables. Let's see Justin Fields in the middle of the field, not so much red zone. Take off, do that package then, and, turn the Josh Cribbs tables around. And that doesn't have to be something intricately installed on 3 days like they did it the other week. So they should be ready for it.
Jim, you hear anything injury-wise for the Steelers after last game? Is there anything that's concerning that we should know about that you're hearing about? Maybe an injury that someone sustained in the game?
No, Keanu Benton is practicing. He's not even on the practice. He's not even on the injured list. I think all's good to go, except Alex Highsmith. But I tell you, Nick Herbig, man, I don't want to lose Alex Highsmith by any means. Mm-hmm. Nick Herbig's a ball player, huh?
I mean, he's just wildly. He's like a pit bull that's been fed gunpowder, man. Like he's just
He doesn't stop.
wild. He's coming after the ball constantly. Now, it can get him out of position at times. He'll over pursue. He'll be a little too aggressive. But man, I'll steal a Tomlinism here. I'd rather have to say whoa than sick him, right? Like absolutely get after the ball every single time. And they are. I mean, once Highsmith is healthy again, they're going to have an embarrassment of riches on the edge. And that's probably just what you need getting into the teeth of those games in December when you've got Jalen Hurts, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got maybe you're going to have Lamar at least once more and maybe even twice more, depending on how the playoffs shake out. So if you can keep your edge rushers fresh against those tackles, you're going to have an opportunity, especially the better tackles in Philly and Kansas City. You're going to have an opportunity to make some noise in those games that maybe people, there's still going to be opportunities, Jim, I think, for people to look at the Steelers and say, oh, yeah, well, I mean, they beat the Ravens, or maybe they beat the Browns on a Thursday night, or they beat the Bengals. Those are teams they know. Let's see how they do against those really good teams in Philly and Kansas City. And I think you answer the questions against those teams. Now you're talking about really paying off on everything that they thought was possible.
Well, I mean, that Philly game's in Philly. They haven't won there since 1965. And I was looking up a old Brownies game. I believe it was when Jim Finks threw 4 TD passes, the highest scoring Steelers win, the first win ever in 1954. The Browns turned the ball over 8 times. So I looked up to see if it was a record. The record is 12 times, and that was 1965, the last time they won in Philly. That's what it takes to win in Philly, even no matter how bad the 65 team was. 12 turnovers. So
I don't know if we should hold our breath.
Yeah, I predicted that they would lose this game at the beginning of the year. Now, I think their momentum is going to carry them, and their grit is going to carry them. And the understanding that they've lost 3 straight times in Cleveland on Thursday nights. So I think all their grit's going to carry them, but I don't know if anything can carry them in Philly. It's just, and then Kansas City's a Wednesday night game at home.
Yeah.
And, these 4-day rest games are tough on the travelers. So by then, Kansas City should have the division clinched. And I think that's an easier, more winnable game on Christmas.
I agree with that. Jim, what makes the Steelers defense, in your opinion, so opportunistic? I mean, they seem like they get the turnovers it's almost like you're watching the game expecting it as a fan, like, all right, something's going to happen here. They're going to get a turnover. Like the Herbig play, I don't know if you were probably in the press box, Chris, if you were watching it at home, you can actually see it like a split second before it happened. Like I remember like seeing Herbig coming behind him, like, oh, he's a strip at. Like I actually had that feeling in my head, like, he's going to strip the ball. But what do you think the Steelers preach on defense that makes these opportunistic plays happen? I mean, it seems like it's year in and year out they make these plays that like bail out our offense and keep us in the games.
I would have to ask TJ Watt if a coach actually taught him how to punch the ball out. Because I don't know whether it was chicken or the egg. I want to think they're all trying to copy TJ. And Nick, if he doesn't do anything else, he copies TJ, right? Out of Wisconsin. So, I mean, punching the ball out is a TJ Watt thing. You see other guys try it, and they end up punching the player, and you get 15 yards. TJ, man, when he punches it, he gets ball. And Nick did that. Now, Peyton Wilson just made a great play. Patrick Queen, another, an ex-Raven, just all desire there. I don't know how to sum up all their turnovers, but I just want to give TJ the credit.
You brought up Patrick Queen. We hadn't mentioned him yet. I was going to mention his was more than a punch. It was more of a rip. And there's something to be said, I think, and this has kind of flown under the radar, I think, this year. I don't know what you think, Jim. Tell me. But their tackling this year is some of the best in the league. You're not seeing a lot of missed tackles. What you're seeing are guys get to the point of attack, wrap up the ball carrier, and then the next wave comes. And when I've seen Steeler defenses do that in the past, The second wave that comes in attacks the football because the player is already wrapped up and taken care of. And that's what's leading to it, whether it's a punch in Herbig's case, or I think more accurately in Queen's case, the rip of the football literally out of the ball carrier's hands. And, it gets back to a fundamental. They're a better tackling team this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Peyton Wilson, I thought, came into the league with some unimpressive physicality on tape in college. Great speed. I had 1,000 tackles. But, I think he is learning from Landon Roberts what being physical in the hole means. So that's one guy. I think it's, Deshaun Elliott. If he's nothing else, he's a tackler. DeMonte Casey. Keanu Benton made a great tackle against the Redskins that saved a long run from Jaden Daniels late. And Joey Porter Jr. made a big tackle against Lamar. And I went to ask him about the tackle. And I said, hey, Joey, tell me about that tackle. When did you read it? What gave it away? Why did you leave your man? And Casey was dressing right next to him. And Casey goes, see, Joey, listen to them. Joey, you finally made a tackle. And I'm like, hey, I did not say finally. You just said it.
Yeah.
And he knows he was busted. He was the one putting pressure on Joey, but masking it as the journalists are coming after you, finally making a tackle. It was Casey that was busting Joey Porter's butt about tackling you finally. So there's a lot of peer pressure, and it's closing in, and it's all working together. It's a team unit. They love each other. They really do. But even if they have to mock each other to get it done.
Jim, you've been around this team for years and years. So I got to ask you this question as someone who has seen good teams, you've seen bad teams. Where's your gut at right now with this team? Like, what's your gut feel on this team right now? Like, how do you perceive this team right now? Perceive them?
They need a little more on offense, right? We all know that, and they need another receiver. They need more. I'm not. Here we go with the Najee stuff again. I'm not sold on him. I can't wait till they look for a real running back next year. An explosive running back. This guy has a lot of assets, but I want him doing it for the Titans. I don't care. I love Jaylen Warren. I think he's a championship number 2. I don't think Najee's a championship number 1.
I agree.
So I understand where you're coming from, and I think a lot of the criticism of Najee is fair, especially given what he's shown us the first 3 years in the league, right? I think that there's plenty to look at and say, man, this is not good enough. This is not what I saw from this guy at Alabama. And I'd chalk up a lot of it, right? Not to excuse it, but chalk up a lot of it to the offensive lines he played behind the first couple of years at the NFL level. Do you think there's anything to, and I know this is something, at least I have a really good feeling this is something that Mike Tomlin takes into account with Najee, his ability to run physically and wear defenses down. That even though I think we've said it before on this very podcast, he's not a home run hitter, right? He's a singles hitter, for lack of a better analogy.
Doubles.
Or occasionally he'll drive one to the gap. Yeah. So to use that baseball analogy, he's not a home run hitter. He's not going to read a hole perfectly, break through to the second level, put a move on somebody, and go for 65 yards and 6. But he is that guy that I think Mike Tomlin relies on. You brought up the ball security issue earlier. Mike Tomlin relies on to chip away, and physically wear down a defense. Is that something that you think? That's the advantage I see in Najee, is that he can wear down a defense even if he's not hitting those home runs. Is that what you think lends Mike Tomlin to his sense of loyalty to Najee?
I know, but then you get trapped at the end. It was a great timeout by Tomlin on that 2-pointer. He saw Lamar Jackson going to run a pop pass, run to the line of scrimmage, jump pass over. They tie the game, and that's a big momentum shift. Now Justin Tucker can save his reputation with the field goal, and they win it. And you go, what the hell just happened? But, they called timeout. Joey Porter was able to make the tackle and stop all that. So it's just too close. I don't know. If it was Franco, yeah. If it was Jerome, yeah. even Jerome could hit the home run. He did every now and then, not when he got old, but he could hit the home run. So, it's Najee needs all 12 people blocking and getting their man. Then it was he needs a quarterback to set the blocking right because Fields isn't doing it. That was his criticism in Chicago. Then it was Mack Starks was on our show saying, you got to run Najee up the middle. Okay, that's true. And then now Matt Steele wrote for Steel City Insider, you got to get under center. Najee's no good out of shotgun. I mean, everything has to be for Najee. Every little thing has to be perfect for this guy. I don't want it to be about Najee. I want it to be about Russell Wilson, their tight ends, their receivers. I want it to be about Pickens, but I don't think you need a pass-happy offense. So there's some offensive problems. There's some problems that keep me from saying, yeah, this is a championship team. Championship defense, championship experienced quarterback, championship playmaker in George Pickens, although he does some really weird stuff. If he'd have got that foot down, they might have had to use a timeout. It might not have worked out for a 4-yard gain or whatever it was. It might not have been. Everybody's ripping him for jumping out of bounds. I get he was trying to stop the clock. I like that was in his mind. But a little weird, but I don't know that it would have helped them as much if he'd have dragged that foot. Anyway.
Jim, explain to the people what we're witnessing right now with Chris Boswell. I mean, I remember Gary Anderson. I thought he was a great kicker, but I've never seen anything like this where a guy comes out and a 50-yarder is basically, I can pretty much turn my head. I can't remember the last time I watched a kicker be this automatic in Pittsburgh. And I know the second year in Pittsburgh, I remember from social media, he struggled and people were quick to get rid of him. He's terrible. I remember that year, it was like he just missed some field goals that year. But ever since then, I think he's continually gotten better. And in your mind, is this the best you've ever witnessed from a Steelers kicker in the season?
I'd have to say, yeah. I think what makes him unflappable, and I asked him, what makes you so unflappable? And I don't know that a guy can answer that, but excuse me, he does not care. He was on his way out the locker room after being the star of the game, and he denied this. And I asked him, is this a changing of the guard with you and Justin Tucker? Did this game signify that?
Yeah.
He does not care. He does not care. He was on his way out the locker room when we grabbed him. I'm like, hey, Chris, you got a minute? He goes, I'll be back. And somebody said he will be back this time. He usually doesn't come back. He does not care about talking to the media. He does not care. I used to think that some kickers don't like when you bring up, hey, you made 12 in a row. What's your key? Because then they think they're going to miss the next one. Don't talk about it. Stop talking about it. He does not care one way or the other. He just does not care. He does not care to be friends with the media. He's got his friends with the players. I don't want to call him a nice guy. He wasn't his usual prickish self after this game because it was a big.
He made 6 field goals. Yeah, he's feeling good. He's happy. Absolutely.
But, I mean, he really could have been. He could have left and not cared at all. He just does not care. My favorite Tomlinism, we do not care. And Boswell does not. I think that's what makes him unflappable. He does not care.
Well, I mean, you just look at where he already ranks, and he leads the league in field goals made this year, obviously, when you have 2 6 field goal performances, that'll help. But he's already top 50 all time in field goals made. And I think to your point, I think we did see a little bit of a passing of the torch, as it were. Tucker misses multiple field goals in the same game. He struggled all year, not just against the Steelers this past week. And Boswell has essentially won 2 games for his team, with some help. Yeah, obviously. But without him, they don't win those 2 games where he had 6 field goals each and they had 0 touchdowns. I think I heard someone say that he's got more fantasy points for what it matters. He's got more fantasy points this year than Tyreek Hill. I mean, so you roll it all up, like the guy is a legitimate weapon. And I think, to JT's point, given some of the kickers the Steelers have had over the years, I mean, it's pretty impressive to think that he could go down as the franchise's best of all time and one of the best of all time in the league as well. Before we let you run, Jim, I wanted to ask about the offensive line because, it feels like things continue to come together now, especially that they're healthy again. Mason Cole is back. You feel good, I think, about them moving in a positive direction down the stretch. You get to see offensive line play from a different angle, though, when you're sitting in the press box like you are every week. Just what have you seen? A lot of people still are frustrated by Broderick Jones, the penalties, things like that. I think that just comes from youth and inexperience. You brought it up last time we talked. He's, I think, the youngest guy on the offensive line by a good bit, despite, other draft picks being in there with him. Just what are you seeing from the offensive line? And is it a reason to believe that they can continue, despite the 0 touchdown performance against the Ravens, continue the level of success they've had under Russ?
Yeah, I like what Tomlin said about Broderick, and I'm sure I've said this to you guys. Broderick in the locker room has not shrunk. He's not shrunk from the media. He's and he's not. It's not like he takes all the blame. It's not like he acts as a pitiful object. He's young, and he's I don't want to say he's happy, but he's got a good attitude, and he admits his mistakes, but he doesn't wallow in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a good attitude there. I'm not sure what his problems are this year, but to hear his coach stand behind him the way he did the other day will help him big time, I think. And so Mason McCormick gave up a big sack late to a big man. That was a key. And Mason's a rookie. Mason's older than Broderick. So we knew it was going to be difficult, and Fautano being available would really help, but he's not. And so you gotta think that Broderick's going to get better. It can't get worse.
Apologies to Zach Frazier. I just realized I said Mason Cole a moment ago, and there's no comparison really, I don't think, between Mason Cole and what we're getting from the old Morgantown Mauler this year, Zach Frazier, as a rookie center in the NFL. Jim, again, thanks so much for your time. JimWexell.com. Grab those books, especially the new Steelers coffee table book he showed you earlier there for your Steeler fans for the holidays. And, of course, check out SteelCityInsider.net as well for the latest on this year's team. Always appreciate the time, Jim. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Always good being here. Take care.
Absolutely. Be sure to check out DraftNation.com for the latest, including those mock drafts and player profiles that I mentioned earlier that JT has got up this week as well. It's all a part of Draft Nation. Thanks for coming on the clock with us.